Today we're going to talk more about actions that you might take within a Stoic framework and how you might come about to do that and what you might make of it. So from a Stoic point of view, as we said in the last video, it's all about focusing your mind on what you can do and not worrying about things that you can't do, things that other people are doing, stuff like that. Focus on what you can do and choose actions from within a list perhaps of actions that you might take in a situation. So why might you take actions in a situation? I think we talked a little in the first video about the aeroplane sort of pilot model of mental activity. Seeing yourself as a pilot in control of an aircraft. Of course, pilots controlling aircrafts do control relatively few of the actions of the aircraft. They tend to fly along or crash all by themselves, but they can influence the behaviour of the plane directly using certain control surfaces and power and things. And they've got a dashboard or instruments in front of them which tell them lots of information about the aircraft and about the situation the aircraft's in. And they are also accompanied usually by a bunch of different coloured lights that light up to illustrate whether things are sort of green or amber or red, and the more lights that turn amber and red, the worse the situation, I presume. So for us in life, it's very much the same, and we're in control of our actions, which do have a certain influence on the environment, but we have limits to our strength, we have limits to how far we can see clearly, we have limits to how high we can jump or how far we can run. So with a limited range of actions, we're kind of free to act, and of course if we try too hard and too long, we'll also run out of energy and not be able to act on an ongoing basis. But within sort of a framework of actions, we've got a lot of possibilities. Why would we choose particular things to do? Well, again, like the pilot, we'd be flying along and we might have a relatively limited range of actions. We might just do ordinary things. We might look at our weekly budget and add up the numbers and see that we want to save for something, and there's not enough money in the account for that, so we're going to have to make some savings, and so we're going to spend a little bit less on entertainment, perhaps, and alcohol, maybe, which would be a good thing. So, we then make a plan and we enact the plan. It's within our control, and we just do what we like so that we can save money for this other thing. This is pretty ordinary stuff. There's not many flashing lights going on in the cockpit, you might say, when we're doing this, and we'd maybe not be terribly driven to act in this way, and might occasionally sort of vary because we're not really desperate about this savings business. It might take us an extra week or two to save the money. But there are other situations in life, like you might encounter as a pilot in a plane, where things are actually going terribly wrong. Engines are overheating, or storms are breaking that are affecting the performance of the aircraft and causing large numbers of lights to come on. And this kind of happens for us. The lights, I think, represent our emotions. So, we have, little ticking over little lights that tell us things are going okay, but when things are not going okay, we have more and more lights going on. And as they talk about in pilot training, this increases the workload that you have in your life. So if lots of lights are going off, things are getting really difficult. So the instruments maps are going a little bit crazy as well. You're going to have to attend to this and attend to it from a limited range of choices of things that you can do. And you're also going to have to prioritise because you can only do one thing at a time. And I think this is very much what happens to people when they sort of enter a crisis. And they may be better or worse trained to face these sorts of things. And I guess these videos are a way of trying to help you train yourself. Now we can also talk about how some aircraft perform better or worse, and they've been better or worse maintained. And we can talk about this in terms of your life a little bit later on in the channel. We talk about things like childhood adversity and well-being and resilience as well. But nonetheless, let's say you're just faced with a situation you're in with the aeroplane that you've got, and it's been maintained to the best of the ability of the mechanics, that probably being partly you, and you enter a situation where lots of red lights are going, and you're going to have to do something. So you have to think about what to do, because when you act, if you've got relatively little time, and you want your actions to be as effective as possible at turning the red lights off and making them go amber and then green, and maybe stabilising some of these instruments. So that is a key element of Stoicism, this aspect of temperance, about standing back a little bit from the situation and taking a careful look at what's going on, not reacting immediately to a bunch of flashing lights or funny instrument results, but rather thinking temperately about what you might do. And so they talk about the problem of passions. So passions in Stoicism, as we said, is not just your barista making a great coffee. It's about acting straight out of your feelings. And that's another thing we're going to come to a little bit later on about why that might happen. But very strong feelings tend to promote certain ways of thinking and therefore certain actions. And so this can move into almost what might seem like an automatic sort of frame of working, some sort of autopilot that you get in a distressed emotional state of whatever kind, or a strong emotional state, and you start acting purely on the basis of what you think kind of automatically in that state. And one of the important things of Stoicism is to try and avoid doing that, to have a buffer of clear thinking between your automatic thoughts about and your feelings and your actual actions. And that's a key aspect of a Stoic approach to life. And of course, the more difficult the circumstances, the more difficult this is to enact and the more practice is required. But in the first instance, I'd like you just to think carefully about that. So within that kind of buffer zone of clear thinking, or reasonably clear thinking, and under desperate circumstances perhaps, or just difficult circumstances, the Stoics propose that you act within a moral framework. So this is this Greek virtue ethics. So that is, to be courageous, temperate, just, and wise. Wisdom, of course, comes from learning from your mistakes. So it's an accumulated talent. But the other talents can be explained perhaps more clearly. So, the idea of acting courageously in all things, this is a virtue. Perhaps it's self-evident to most of us that it's a good thing to stick to our principles and to take clear actions despite fear of adverse consequences. I'm going to recommend it. I don't have a long justification for courage as a basis for action. But temperance certainly has a lot more to offer in terms of being able to rationalise that, to be able to act temperately, to take stock of your situation, to think clearly, and to act calmly and decisively is enormously useful to people. And it's enormously useful to pilots when they get into storms and lightning and engine fires and things, and it's really useful to people when they get into difficulties with money and relationships and living situations, that they don't act impulsively and desperately, because there's a strong tendency in human frame to do so. And of course, at the end of all this, these emotions will settle down, life will return to normal. It just tends to anyway, revert to the norm, and the lights will go off, the instruments will calm down, you will have succeeded or not to some degree, and then you need to review the situation. So you need to look back and see, particularly from your mistakes. So Stoics aren't too worried about mistakes, they just want to make sure that they learn from them. So wisdom does come from learning from mistakes. Even better if you can learn from other people's mistakes. But that is one of the great sources of wisdom, and being able to review things as you go through life, review your own behaviour kind of objectively, is another key talent that you can acquire along the way. So if we just leave it at that for today, I'll come back and we'll talk more about difficulties of resilience, perhaps in the next episode. Cheers.